This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Western Canada's deepest pre-seed herbicide portfolio from FMC. Choose from a wide range of products that offer burn-off, extended weed control, or get both with a complete solution. See your local retailer today to find the right herbicide for your farm.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And, of course, a big shout out as well, everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, today, Friday, like I said, so we got the RealAg Issues Panel here this afternoon. Looking forward to that. We've got Meagan Murdoch from Hill in Knowlton. We've got Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner from RealAgriculture. We're going to talk about the Prime Minister's beach holiday. Should he have taken it? Should he have paid for it? All that controversy. Seems like a bit of an annual event. We're also going to talk about some of the economic numbers that came out. We got a Canada and U.S. jobs report today. We'll dig into that. Also, this trend in both the U.S. and in Canada where people are moving to two places. In the U.S., people are migrating from states into Texas, specifically moving from California. And in Canada, it's people moving to Alberta. And I think there's some similarities when you think about from a taxation perspective, political persuasion. I think there's a lot of things there to dig into. We'll also do a beef market update with Wasko with the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Okay, if you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll do the beef market update with Wasko right after this.
I'm Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lyndsey Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on Sirius XM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
Okay, before we get to the RealAg Issues Panel, I think we should check in with what's happening in the beef markets. This segment is sponsored by MNP, seeking professional advice for your farm and business. MNP's team of agricultural specialists cover it all, from business planning and tax guidance to financial projections, farm succession, and risk management. Visit MNP.ca to connect with the experts today. Let's get rolling with the beef market update. And, of course, we're joined by Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Ann, how are you today?
Well, I'm good. Happy New Year to you, Shaun.
Yeah, Happy New Year. That's right. I almost forgot this is the first beef market update of the year.
24, that's right.
So what kind of start are we off to here in 24?
Well, of course, first quarters of any year aren't usually where we explode. Now, in the U.S., we did see the cash market a little bit better. 175 in the north. We'll call some live trade there. 274 to 275 delivered draft. That's 1 to 2 higher than the week in between Christmas and New Year. So a little better sign there. A lot of talk, though, this week, Shaun, as we start off 24, about the wholesale price, that choice cutout. It really ran into trouble as we started off the year, down $13 at the last night's close from a week ago, and that puts it at $275.90 on the choice. And if you're going to point your finger at one, it was the rib primal that really ran into the big, deep trouble that caused the market off that much. So that's got everybody talking about what does this mean for demand as we start off the year. And I know you've done some stories already on RealAg about what demand is looking like. So that was the story there. And then just to finish on prices, and then we'll talk about some other things that are driving this. We didn't really have a pile of trade in Alberta, so not enough to report when we're doing this recording. Packers kind of out there with the 360 draft, and feedlots hoping it was going to be closer to 370. So we'll see where that ends up. So
I guess how deep in the red are Packer margins at this point then?
Well, this is going to send them, they actually had a profitable overall December. So this will be a bit of a shocker and send them into the red, in the range of $50+ at this point per head. But the question is where to from here. I think the other key point that we want to talk about as we start off the year, which is not going to really help things, is both the U.S. and Canada. We've got carcass weights running at record levels. So the U.S. steer weight last week, 942 pounds. That's up 22 pounds from a year ago. And in Canada, Shaun, we're at a record 989 pounds. That's 50 pounds heavier than a year ago. And we've put on 30 pounds in the past month. Ooh. In terms of steer carcass weight. So, yeah, there's some big cattle going through the packer right now, and it's showing up in spades. So it just, in a nutshell, if you haven't put the pieces together, it just means every time you kill a steer, it's that much more beef to sell at the other end, and that just really causes a drag on the market. We've got to get through a lot of product here.
Yeah. And when we talk about concerns about demand, and listen, and that ship is like, that is not written in stone yet what demand's going to be like. But there is, like you said, there is some concerns out there when we've got the amount of tonnage that is going to be processed. We can't afford right now, one, a slowdown in domestic consumption, or any sort of disruption from an export perspective.
Those points, and then even bringing it closer to home, Shaun, we want to make sure these packers are getting through and not backing off their kills. So like we talked about, packer margins going back into the red. Does that, did we slow down production pace at all? That's exactly what we don't need. Yeah. So things to watch, Shaun, if you're out there watching data and numbers, we want to see the weekly kills staying high, whether it's fed cattle or non-fed cattle. We've got to get through supplies here in the first quarter.
Okay, now have they backed off the kill already? Is that what's driving those carcass weights higher? What's the key driver there?
Yeah, certainly in Canada, the fed steer and heifer slaughter was down really all through 2023, but the cow kill was up. So it's not like production overall at the plant slowed down drastically, but certainly the switch of the type of class of cattle, especially in that fourth quarter that they were really working on getting through. So it's that classic, there was a little too much of everything to get through, but we've got to keep the pedal to the metal in terms of our weekly slaughter rates.
Now, something that is positive, though, we've seen some basis improvement.
Yeah, I did want to mention when the dust all settled for the month of December in Alberta, in terms of that spot basis, cash to cash, we did see it average 650 under, and that was the only month in 2023 that posted a better than the 5-year average kind of number. So that was interesting to see. But overall, again, hate to rain on the parade, but for all of 2023, we ended up at minus 14 or 14 under the U.S. That's one of the weakest years other than, say, 22 and 2014. So 2023 doesn't go down in the record books as a strong base this year, but we did finish December in better fashion. So we'll watch that as we go through the first quarter. If you recall last year, Shaun, we had such a difficult first quarter in basis levels. So that'll be something we're going to watch closely as we start off the year.
Yeah, we were talking about demand a little bit earlier. We've got some data on November retail prices in Canada.
Yeah, if you thought you were spending more money at the store for beef in Canada in November, these are November average prices from StatsCan. The beef price was up 11% from last year for November versus the previous November, so at $21.75. Pork prices in November were up 5% in Canada at retail, and chicken prices actually dropped 2% from the previous November. So interesting move, but certainly beef leading the pack and ending the year about 6% higher overall from 2022.
We're going to need to see beef potentially being real featured at the grocery store and some of the flyers and some of the advertisements here.
Yeah, whether it's retail features, or it'll be interesting to watch and see, do we get some food service features? As it'll be interesting to see how end users try to move product when we've got these issues on the other end in terms of consumers and the economy, and if inflation's slowing down, but what's going on with employment and all those pieces. It'll just be interesting to see how things pan out as we go through the year.
Yeah, you said on the average up 11%. Is there any kind of cut that's kind of leading that? Like, is that hamburger or tenderloin?
No, good. Yeah, good catch. Good point out, Shaun. Certainly that rib, anything from the rib was up big time in November over October, whereas the ground beef price actually held just steady. So if you saw more deals on ground beef, this data would confirm that, but you did not see many deals on rib products in November in Canada.
Interesting. And thanks so much for joining us here this week for the Beef Market Update. Really appreciate it. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll chat with you in a couple weeks.
Hey, thanks. You too, Shaun.
Okay, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio with the RealAg Issues Panel. We got Meagan Murdoch from Hill and Knowlton. We've got Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner, and they're standing by, and we'll be back right after this.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
As you look ahead to the next growing season, there's a lot to consider when it comes to your crop. You need every possible advantage available to you. The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to make the best choice for you and your farm. On-demand videos with leading industry experts, available anywhere, anytime. Go into the season confident and ready with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Let's dive into the RealAg Issues Panel here on this Friday. This segment's brought to you by FP Genetics. Innovative seed genetics for Canadian farmers. Contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region. Visit fpgenetics.ca to learn more. First up, Lyndsey Smith coming out of the nation's capital, Ottawa, Ontario. Lyndsey, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm pretty excited to be back in the swing of things, I'll be honest.
Yeah. It's I look forward to Fridays. I do.
Yeah, so the holiday Monday has sort of mixed us up though a little. I won't lie.
Yeah.
It does make for a very strange week. I haven't known what day it was, and all of a sudden it's Friday when I have a lot to do to be ready for the weekend. So there you go.
Well, we'll get through it. We'll
Yeah. One thing at a time, like this show.
Also, Kelvin Heppner coming out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, how is the first week of January treating you winter-wise?
We're doing well here. It's been above normal temperatures. I think today or tomorrow might be the last day before it dips into next week. But yeah, above seasonal temperatures, and we're enjoying it. I did talk to a neighbor though who sells corn, and he said some colder temperatures would be good for corn demand because feed mills right now are not buying as much corn because animals aren't eating as much. So.
Huh.
And which side of whether you're buying or selling corn, but whether you want more demand or whether you're okay with prices where they are. But that's one of the impacts here of this above normal winter that we've had so far.
And we did hear from Ann Wasko earlier on the show here about the carcass weights really up in both Canada and the U.S. on the beef side. Also joining us is Meagan Murdoch with Hill and Knowlton. Meagan, how are you?
Good. I'm really great. Nice to see you guys. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you have a good holiday season?
Sure did. Found slightly warmer weather down in Florida where my snowbird parents are. But it's not so bad here in Toronto. It just 0 degrees today.
Yeah, I was in Ridgetown, Ontario Wednesday, Thursday, and really like chilly, but like comparatively speaking, just kind of mild. It just feels like that's the winter that we're going to have this year for the most part. I'm not going to complain about it, but it definitely feels warmer really across the board.
Yeah, I'm not getting my hopes up. If it goes by the old saying, in like a lamb, out like a lion, we still have a long winter to go.
We only apply that rule in March.
Is that it?
Okay. Canadian economic numbers. We got the December jobs report for Canada and the U.S. I guess let's talk about Canada. Get ready for it. We created in December 100 net new jobs, Kelvin. 100. Look at us go.
100 new jobs, but population grew by 74,000, according to StatsCan estimates. So, yeah. Pretty mixed, soft, bit of a going out with a whimper in terms of the 2023 labor market. So, yeah, 100 jobs, basically unchanged. Unemployment also held at 5.8%, which is up 0.8 of a percentage point from back in spring. So still at kind of that higher level, having moved up almost 1% in the last year. Further, I think this doesn't really change a lot in terms of expectations for the central bank, for Bank of Canada, when it comes to interest rate cuts. Wage growth still running above pace historically, and so yeah, expectations still push towards middle of the upcoming year in terms of potential rate cuts at this time.
Yeah, job market in the U.S. I would say significantly stronger than what we saw in Canada. But Meagan, I think part of the question now is what the central banks do they lower rates because they can? Or do they lower rates because they should? Is kind of what I think some of the questions are right now.
Well, Malcolm, at least in Canada, said before the holidays that it's too early to even consider rate cuts. Of course, they're being very, very cautious about the market signals that they send. So we will know when there's going to be a rate hike when they say there's going to be a rate hike. I don't think there will be foreshadowing until they're very, very certain about where to go. You'll remember that there was a lot of criticism about how slow they were to increase the interest rates and attack inflation. So all eyes will be on them, making sure that they, don't go too fast or too slow as we head into the new year. So they'll be watching, these lower jobs, but as you've mentioned, or Kelvin mentioned, in the US, the jobs have increased significantly more beyond their expectations. And we think the US is probably going to act before Canada acts in terms of lowering their interest rates. So we'll watch what they do in the coming months to kind of see where Canada goes.
And Lyndsey, all this adds up to, we heard it from Kevin Greer when you talked to him earlier this week. We just talked to Ann Wasko about it. This question of demand around proteins and all of this discussion about interest rates, I think it all kind of connects because we've got a lot of protein to chew through. The pork industry is really desperate for the fundamentals to really turn around. We need a strong consumer. Lower rates would really not be the be all end all, but would help enable that consumer to be stronger in 24.
Right. And so we did. We've heard that, certainly we're not forecasting huge demand for beef, pork, and yes, on the pork side, desperately needed to get through some of the supply. The supply has come in indicating bigger than perhaps what we had hoped for. So when we talk about, what rates do and do they change rates based on what they should or could do, I think it depends who you're talking to. Excuse me. For the Bank of Canada, what they should do obviously is going to be in line with what they want to do with inflation, but what the average consumer wants them to do is going to be very different. So we definitely, I think, are seeing, we're past the holidays now. We've got Blue Monday coming up. I think the overall economic sense is still pretty, it's not rosy for the average consumer. And the longer, that every month that passes, we've got more people that renew a mortgage, and that really starts to eat into that disposable income. And that, of course, is going to make things like our grocery bills and those sorts of things hurt even more. So yeah, I think most are looking for a relief on that inflation side, on the interest rate side. But all of this, of course, also takes time to work its way through the system as well. Yeah. So, we're still seeing the impacts of what those rate changes really will have overall. We're not through it yet by any stretch.
They take 6 to 9 months to work themselves through the system. Yeah. And we saw in the October Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index, we saw in the January Ag Barometer, the CME Ag Barometer, that farmers, in terms of future farm financial performance, are concerned about their borrowing costs. And so this is going to have an impact on overall farmer, not only their sentiment, but their actual, I think, results, because they are concerned about it. So clearly it's having an impact when it comes to the costs around the farm. Kelvin, do you think there's anything to the theory out there that I've heard from several economists and analysts, is that as inflation comes down and wage growth happens, because that is what it is happening on both sides of the border, that companies can't hide some of those increased wage costs in the products because inflation's coming down, which leads actually to more layoffs. Do you kind of believe in that sort of vicious circle and vortex?
Yeah, I think that is ultimately, that's why central banks pay such close attention to unemployment numbers and whether they climb. And that's where this whole idea of a soft landing, whether we can bring down inflation without having a spike in unemployment to the point of having a recession and decline in GDP and all of that, where we're officially in kind of a consensus recession. I don't think we've quite reached that point yet at this point with the current situation. But yeah, I do think central banks certainly are paying close attention to layoffs and that wage inflation or wage increases in wage further drive inflation. That's one of the reasons why I think this inflation story and potential wage cuts, we've talked about this other times, or I've expressed this opinion other times, I think it could take longer than what a lot of consumers are hoping, because wages are climbing and companies are going to have to make that decision. Do we pass that cost on, or do we lay these people off? Well, laying people off doesn't always mean lower prices or even flat prices for consumers. That might make it more expensive to produce things too. So that cost driver is still there, driving inflation if wages are increasing.
Yeah. Meagan, it's January, which means that this is kind of an annual thing. We talk about the holiday the Prime Minister went on. What do we make of this year's I guess controversy, if we'll call it that?
Yeah, good question. Way to pivot there from inflation. But it does make me think that, consumers are struggling to, make ends meet. We're hearing, the grocers are under fire to lower the cost of groceries. And at the same time, we're hearing this story out of Ottawa that the Prime Minister, did go on holiday. Certainly not an easy feat for any prime minister to take a holiday, given security concerns, trying to go somewhere where they can truly get away from the crowds. And of course, the current prime minister is more popular globally than really any prime minister in a long, long time. So I can't imagine it's easy to find a spot, but, to learn that, he went on holiday and his accommodations were free. They were, provided to him by a family friend. I think a lot of Canadians, will feel a bit offside with that when they're really struggling in this economy, and, what their Christmas looked like may have been a little bit different than the Prime Minister's.
There is an element here, though.
Amount right now? What's the maximum donation amount federally in Canada right now?
Well, good question. 1,600 maybe?
Per year. And so this vacation has been valued at $84,000.
$9,500 a night.
Yeah, 95 or 9,300 a night. And so how is this allowed when, like, that's basically a donation to the Trudeau family? But
no, because it's a family friend, Kelvin. It's a family friend.
I know, but a family friend can't make a massive political donation. So that's
I know I'm not in government, but I went to Florida and I stayed with my parents, and they paid for the accommodation, right? Their house is the accommodation.
Yeah.
Is it that nobody can go and actually stay with a family member, family friend, for free?
Well,
I don't know.
But to me, there's just a perception issue. Like, sure, the ethics commissioner cleared this and said that this was allowed. There weren't any rules broken here. But to me, there's just this perception issue further to the whole cost of living and affordability perspective that a lot of Canadians have on it.
Yeah, Lyndsey?
Well, so I struggle with this one a little bit because, okay, so there's the ethics side, which, yes, it's cleared. Okay. So there's no wrongdoing, there's no whatever. And there's some transparency, at least after the fact. But there's also the morality of some of this, of like, you're going, and I'm not begrudging anyone a vacation. Let's face it. I mean, everyone who works would love to take a warm holiday. Lots of people do. Some people shack up with their parents like Meagan did. And that's, personally, if I had friends down that way, that's what I'd be doing too, because you can save some money. But at the same time, like, I'm of two minds here. I mean, everyone's entitled to a holiday, and frankly, you would think leading a country is kind of stressful and you should have some time off and to spend some time with your kids and whatever. But the flip side is, if we expect the leader of our country to lead by example, let's say, it's not exactly an austerity measure, right? And we know that, the Prime Minister has a residence over in Quebec. There's a cabin in Quebec that is, as far as I understand it, quite lovely, that they could spend time in. They've got, places in Montreal that they could go to. So as the leader of Canada, I don't know, but I also get the sense that, this is also a prime minister who likes to go surfing in Tofino at inopportune times. So I get the sense that they like their vacations, and I don't know that they care what we think of where they go or how long.
To me, that's a sign he's nearing the end of his time. If he doesn't
think so.
Are we going to talk about the walk in the snow? Let's do that in the next segment.
I
don't think he's done.
We have a residence that they can't even live in anymore because we can't afford. We can't pay.
And no one wants to fix it. That's the other thing. It's not just that it became a political hot potato a long time ago to not fix 24 Sussex. So now nobody can. So now we need to bulldoze it, right?
I saw some tweets from some Conservative MPs. I saw the one from Andrew Scheer, and I just think there's the money part of it. But there's other people taking he took a vacation part.
Well, but
and I think that crosses the precipice of, like, okay, what do we want here? Like, what are we actually saying? And if you're going to be upset about and liking some of those tweets about how he's out of touch and taking a vacation while you're sitting yourself in bloody Mexico or Hawaii on your own vacation.
Grain farmers. Anyway, I'm just pointing the finger.
There's an element here of, like, just parking. I understand the ethics part of it and the money that need. I am challenged by that. But in terms of him taking a vacation, okay, I don't.
And a world leader can't just go to a week in Mexico. Like, you can't, right? Like, there's security and you can't just go to any resort and just go hang out for the cheapest flight or whatever. Like, let's face it.
He's not flying Allegiant. He's not flying out of Grand Forks going to Mexico. Okay.
Exactly.
Hey, we got to take a break. We'll be back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Like your own health, your crops need regular maintenance and frequent checkups to ensure optimal health. Farm Command from Farmer's Edge is your digital field assistant where you can track your applications and be notified of crop health changes. Visit farmersedge.ca/farmcommand to book a demo. We've got Meagan Murdoch from Hill and Knowlton. We've got Kelvin Heppner and Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture. Okay, I think it was Lyndsey that mentioned it. Well, I want to get kind of a rapid fire response here. We're approaching what people have deemed to be the walk in the snow, where there's going to be a bit of a question here. Will the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, follow his father's footsteps, take that walk in the snow, and decide his own fate? What do we think? Does he step down, or he'll be here in 25 for the election? Lyndsey, you first.
Oh, he's sticking it out. There will be no walk in the snow. Frankly, we don't have any snow right now in Ottawa. So there's that. It would be more like a walk in the brown. But either way, we may have snow by then because I think it's February 28th. Kelvin, correct me if I'm wrong. It's end of February that Pierre Elliott Trudeau took this walk and decided he was done. I don't think so. No, I think Trudeau will wait till he is voted out.
Maybe a walk in the sandy beach on a
he's had
holiday.
Those.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Meagan, what do you think?
No, he's here till the bitter end. It's extremely rare that a politician knows when to step down, and I don't think this is one of those times.
Joe Biden. Kelvin.
I'm going to make it unanimous here, I think. I don't think Trudeau's never been really sentimental, and he's always tried to distance himself from his father, so why would he do something just because it is an anniversary? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I can hear it already. I told you it was just like his dad. I told you.
Yeah.
I agree. I think
it is unanimous.
It is unanimous, which means he's going to quit. I think what I do wonder, though, similar to what's happening south of the border with President Biden, is there political will for the party to make a change? I think that's a much more interesting question. And Megan's shaking her head for those of you that are watching this on YouTube. Megan, why not?
No, I think they'll continue to back their leader. They've always been very supportive of him. Of course, we've started to hear some rumors. I'm not sure they're terribly informed individuals that there is, people, in the caucus room making comments and whatnot. But I think they've always been quite a united caucus. And I don't think they'll split from him before he's ready.
Does anybody think they will split?
I think there will be a bit more of an uprising. There's a lot of red seats that are at risk right now, and people that we know well, their seats are at risk, and I think that there's going to be a lot more noise coming from those back rows.
And
it's to the point of pushing him out. I don't think it'll get to that point, but there'll be some division.
Just not a clear next person at this point. Like I think the ship has sailed on Chrystia Freeland in terms of that. Like maybe she will be the next person, but she's not like where everybody's like, oh, it's Chrystia Freeland. Because I think after the NAFTA renegotiation, that's kind of what everybody thought, and that blooms kind of off the rose. I think a little bit for even people that are sort of undecided in the center. There's probably some polling on that, but it's just sort of my take on it. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about shipping rates. I want to move on to that. We got a lot of disruption in the Middle East, Kelvin, and we've talked about how shipping rates have been coming down, and what's happening in the Red Sea, Suez Canal. It's really creating some chaos on what it costs to ship some cargo.
Yeah, shipping rates have, it depends which index you look at. Some of them show shipping rates doubling in basically the last 2 weeks to move a container from, let's say, Asia to Northern Europe, that type of thing. So, yeah, shipping rates, this is where it's going to affect more than just goods that are moving through that at-risk Red Sea area. And it seems like things have taken a turn for a worse here again in the last day or two, as Maersk announced today that they are going to stop again sending any vessels through there. They've even turned some around that had gone through the Suez Canal already. And so these terrorist attacks, or the Houthi attacks affecting these ships here, the US and Canada and all these other countries put this coalition together to protect these ships and create some security there. But it certainly seems like this is a typical guerrilla warfare situation where it's very difficult to, even if only 1% of these cheap drones get through, it's still too much of a risk for these shipping companies. And so it's proving to be quite a difficult situation that is, again, to bring this back, going to affect shipping rates not only in this area but around the world.
Yeah, and Lyndsey, I think these container rates are still, like, we're way under where we were during the pandemic, of course, but we're looking at, according to Bloomberg, the spot rate for shipping goods in a 40-foot container from Asia to Northern Europe now tops $4,000. That's the 173% jump. So
but
so there's still
like one or 2,000 last month.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so there's a few things going on, but yes, it's a huge increase for the short term just now. Still not, though, nearly where we were, peak pandemic, where it was, absolutely through the roof. I'd have to look it up, but I feel like we hit 20,000 at one point or something ridiculous. Like, it was like an obscene number. So we're a long way off that, but certainly the highest numbers we've seen in quite some time, and a big jump from where they were. And my question, and so I've got some calls out on this as well, and so digging into this on the agriculture side, because we were looking at this a few weeks ago, it's not a huge impact on agriculture goods immediately, certainly consumer goods, yes, but containers, of course, are part of a global system, right? And if you have to add a week, 10 days, 2 weeks to those container movements, that eventually impacts. There's that ripple effect that will impact everywhere. And we do have, of course, plenty of agriculture inputs or commodities that travel by containers. So maybe not an immediate impact, but the longer this goes on, the bigger the impact. And we also saw, of course, during the pandemic, that it takes quite some time to fix this. So 1 day's difference or 1 week difference has a much longer impact, and you can't just fix it in a day or two on the other end either. So the longer this goes on, the more impact this has going forward.
Could I create a situation where companies use this as leverage to make, inflation, got to raise prices? Like,
that's it. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned in the previous segment that grocers are, continue to be under fire. They're supposed to be coming up with a kind of code of conduct. I think Metro was at the Agriculture Standing Committee before Christmas, says that they'll sign on to it if Loblaws and Sobeys do. But, just as we're expecting interest rates to come down and inflation to come down and potentially grocery prices to come down, or at least start leveling, shipping and transportation costs won't be helpful, and will probably be one of those inputs that are driving costs up.
Oh, that old bailiwick of dragging grocers in front of committee and saying you need to behave.
It's going over really well.
So effective.
I gotta tell you, it's so effective.
Lyndsey mentioned fixing this. There's no fix to this that I can see. You can't just fix, to Kelvin's point, terrorists that are, they don't abide by any kind of logical or, rule-based aggression. These are drones with bombs. I don't know how this gets fixed. So is this just new normal of going around?
It might have to be, because they're shooting out drones with expensive artillery. So the rebels are winning either way. Even if they're drones.
It calls into question, though, exactly that, sort of the viability of that trade corridor, which means, we go back to when we didn't have it, or when that giant, remember when the ship blocked it for those weeks? That
was an easier situation to deal with, though.
Somewhat, and definitely funnier memes coming out of it than a serious situation like this. So, but it puts into question, do we now just plan for this for the foreseeable future? And again, that's going to take some time to account for that within the container traffic system.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how there's a clear movement trend of people in Canada and the U.S. It's Texas and it's Alberta. Let's talk about the why of that and what are some of the impacts. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147. We'll be back right after this. I'm Shaun Haney, host of RealAg Radio, right here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM. It has been my pleasure to join you every day in 2023 to bring you all the news and insight in agriculture from Canada and North America. From everyone on the Real Agriculture team, we're wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio in 2023, and we look forward to chatting again in 2024.
Whether you're a rookie soybean grower or a seasoned vet, the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com has exactly what you need to stay in the game. The latest research and the best agronomic advice from industry experts, along with local and global market coverage on demand, anywhere, anytime. Make this growing season your best growing season with the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday. Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith of RealAgriculture, as well as Meagan Murdoch from Hill and Knowlton, based in Toronto. Okay. Well, hey, Meagan, you were giving me, you were sending some very, very nasty text messages earlier this week to me about how claiming that I did not talk about the new Women's Professional Hockey League when I did my little sportsy segment at the beginning of Tuesday's show. And I had to reply to you that, you didn't listen to segment 3 where Pete and I talked about how the lady that got the first goal in the league, he's been to her family farm. So I called you out on it.
My point is that it deserved prime placement at the top of the hour. You talked about every other sport, I think, in it. I actually wondered if it was RealAg when I tuned in, because it seemed like maybe I'd tuned into TSN, although the quality was much less. So I was just very curious as to why this historic moment did not make it into your front preamble.
Can
I just say the Ottawa jerseys are horrid?
Okay. Can I hop in here? Yeah. Why we don't even have names? So I am fully enjoying it. And actually, Kelvin was the day before yesterday. I texted it. I was like, "Are you watching this?" Because the kickoff games are fantastic. We are watching it in our house. I'm loving it. I love all the small town connections as well, which is great. But I really would like team names and better jerseys in general, because merch is such a huge part of bandwagon jumping. I need merch, but I want names and stuff.
I agree, Brian. I'm going to send him an email and say, fix the jerseys. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. I think the team names, that'll be next year. That'll be down the road when they want another round of hype around it. Sell some more merch.
I guess so.
But we've got 3 daughters who all play hockey, and so we've been watching bits and pieces of. We watched the opener and the goalie that got the shutout, the first shutout in the first game, from just down the road in Elm Creek, which our girls play against Elm Creek all the time. So I'm sure we have some farmers in the area who listen as well and probably know the goalies. So like you said, lots of small town connections and just relatable for girls who play hockey and fans.
And before a bunch of people send me an email and say, "Oh, you're being down," I'm not being down in the league. I just said they need better jerseys. I'm actually they deserve better jerseys.
And I completely agree.
Yeah, they deserve better, the swag.
It is.
But it's great.
It's awesome. It is. And I agree with Meagan. It should very much have top billing. But also I will say it's been really fun while we're watching to Google a lot of these players and get to know them, and where they're from and all those sorts of things. So it's been, we've had a great week here watching all these games. So it was great to see Toronto lose, even if they weren't the Leafs.
Is this the point in the show where we're going to break down the college football final?
No. What's football? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, moving on. See, those who can't see, Meagan, the look of disgust is fantastic.
Well,
seriously, I come on to talk about agriculture, and this is what I get.
This is what you get. Okay.
I know it's going to offend a lot of the Montana State listeners that are listening to this show, but I'm cheering for the Grizz on Sunday in that final versus South Dakota. Okay, let's move on here. Bit of a trend happening where in Canada and the U.S., people are migrating domestically to 2 places. Texas in the US and Alberta in Canada. And I find it, we often joke about how Alberta is the Texas of Canada. There is some like-mindedness around some of the political views, I would say. Alberta kind of prides itself, I would say, as a resident of Alberta, I would say that we kind of pride ourselves on being that as well. Meagan, what do you make of this trend?
Yeah, well, it's obvious. The numbers make it pretty clear. Significant movements, obviously, from Ontario, where I'm from. I can only imagine that part of the equation is the cost of housing. Housing here in Toronto, on average, if you're looking at a single family home, is about 1.1 million. A condo is around 800,000. In a city like Calgary, that drops to 600,000. So, that's got to be part of the equation when, families are deciding where should they live and work.
In taxes, there's no sales tax.
I was just going to say the other part of that is the income part. So depending on what you do for work, to pay far less in income tax and have slightly more affordable housing, by the time the month is over, there's a heck of a lot left. If you're looking at Alberta versus Ontario specifically. I'll let Kelvin weigh in before I bring up my completely ridiculous answers for why this is. So
we've seen this in agriculture. Look at, if you want to talk about Ontario to Alberta, look at Corteva, BSF. Both had head offices. The head offices were in Mississauga. Where do they reside now? They reside in the city of Calgary. Kelvin, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if that's just a couple anecdotal cases. I don't know if that's enough to say there's a trend there. But
I said those were two agricultural examples.
But I don't know if that's the same factors at play as it is for the general population, which I won't add much to what has already been said here. I think a lot of this has to do with the opportunity to the income versus cost of living. And right now, with cost of living being such a major issue for so many people, these things and government policies have a factor in this, whether it's taxes or whether it's regulations and red tape and just the difficulty in building new housing or different restrictions on income opportunities, things like that. So I think that's something that all these jurisdictions have in common.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the mainstream media loves to make a big deal about some of the policies that Governor Greg Abbott has in Texas, and the policies or the things that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith say. Yet, hey, it seems like it's attractive to people. That's where they are moving, which is very counter to, I think, what a lot of the mainstream narrative is. Lyndsey, what is your ridiculous thought?
Okay, so it's all because of a streaming series called Yellowstone. Everybody loves a cowboy hat. They want the boots. You got to go to where the cowboy hat and the boots are. But who wants to actually live near Yellowstone? No, you go to Alberta and Texas where you can work and live and still fit in with a cowboy hat. That's why.
Yeah, Stampede's a little bit of, those are kind of circus cowboys.
they're what is it? All hat, no cattle? That's
all hat. I saw a T-shirt like that. I was at Shield not too long ago, and there was a T-shirt that said that.
Yeah. Anyway,
I guess, and there is. I saw a story in the Wall Street Journal talking about how the most booked one-way U-Hauls are from out of California to other places. And there's some similarities, Ontario and California. I think that, there's some overlay there as well. I guess a part of it though is somebody that resides in Alberta, and I hear this a lot from other states that have seen a lot of people migrate to Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Texas. We were mentioned. Sorry, what's that?
Florida is right at the top of all these lists.
Florida's another one too. Okay, you're coming here for a reason. You're moving from that location to our place because obviously it's attractive for taxes and a whole bunch of stuff we've already discussed. Don't bring your politics with it.
But you do.
That's the problem. And so you ruined your state or you ruined your province, and now you're going to try to ruin ours.
So, but it's the same thing as like small towns and like agriculture farming towns. People from the city come and they buy a 2-acre lot because they love the country, quote unquote. And then they complain about tractors and they complain about livestock and they complain about the smell and they don't want you to spray anything and they don't whatever. So why did you move here? You moved here because it was the country, and then they want nothing of the country. So it's the same thing, just on a bigger scale.
But what they do bring is their taxes, Shaun. A lot of the tax movement across Canada is going to Alberta, but I'm sure Albertans will not appreciate the pressure that might put on infrastructure that's not quite prepared for the speed of population increase in terms of schools and health and, you know, all those sorts of things that will have to adapt. But thankfully, they are bringing their dollars with them.
Yeah, you know, and it was interesting. When I was at the Southwest Ag Conference in Ridgetown, I was talking to a group of people after the speech I gave, and we were talking. Somebody had mentioned London. You know, Lyndsey, I was with Ken Cura. Yeah, you're good friend.
Hi, Ken.
Yeah, Kenny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about London and how I can't remember the percentage of growth that London, Ontario has had, but it's significant. And all of that population growth has come with limited increase in infrastructure, highways or hospitals and things like that. And so and there's a lot of places in the US, there's a lot of places in Canada that can probably tell the story. I'm using London as the example. And people are like, what the heck? We have an infrastructure issue here.
Well, and we've had this conversation a few times about our housing starts. So our housing starts in Ontario, not great, and certainly not where they need to be if we're supposed to meet, you know, these new targets for you know, to actually try and fix this crisis. The problem is, I mean, housing is only one aspect of population growth, and we've seen that. I actually happen to live between two of the fastest growing towns in Ontario. So Carleton Place and Arnprior both were on the top 10 list. Same thing. They are sprawling like crazy with new developments, but it's just houses. You have to build schools. You have to expand your hospitals. You need more doctors. Like, these are all the things that have to come along with bringing more people into certain areas. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We got about a minute and a half left. I want one last question here. Meagan, what do you think is going to be the top food trend in 2024?
Well, there are a lot of them, some that I would pass by, some that I might take, but I think the most interesting one, you may have seen it already. It's called the chickle. This is a pickle covered in fried cheese. So you put the cheese in the pan, you let it crisp up, you cool it down, you put the pickle in, you wrap the pickle, and then you dip the pickle. I mean, I just can't think of anything more lovely than that. It's a deep fried pickle taken to a whole new, wonderful level.
That honestly sounds pretty good.
The chickle.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good. I don't know if can we add anything else to that? That might just
okay, and we're done.
2025, Kelvin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Kelvin, what do you think? Or Lyndsey, go ahead. Lyndsey, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to that end, I think we will definitely, this will, even more so than last year, be the year of like the TikTok food trend stuff. Like, you see things like the chickle and you're like, I got to try this. And away you go. So trying new bizarre things that I am 100% doing later.
I heard yesterday that TikTok is trying to expand their overall retail presence in the US by tenfold.
They're looking to give Amazon a run for their money. That's the scale they're looking at.
Yeah. Kelvin, what do you think the trend is?
Oh, I think it's just going to have to do with cost, and we're going to see all kinds of creativity when it comes to things that like this that aren't necessarily more expensive or value, like increasing what we have to pay, but changing it up and adding some variety.
I'm hoping we finally give up on the fact that grocers are the enemy. And we realize that we sort of follow some of the data and realize this is a pretty competitive marketplace. We're not attracting any sort of a new major grocer, and that's not where the issues are. But that's probably
pie in the sky, Shaun. Pie in the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Meagan, have yourself a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks so much. See you guys soon.
That is Meagan Murdoch of Hill and Knowlton. Lyndsey, enjoy yourself watching that new Women's Professional Hockey League.
I will. Thank you.
Kelvin, I'm sure the Leafs are who are they playing this weekend? They always play on Saturday nights.
They're at San Jose back-to-back versus San Jose.
Oh, that should be a gift wrap. The 2 W's?
It should be, but that would be very leafy of them to not follow through on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, pretty cool. The Raptors traded for RJ Barrett, Canadian. That's a pretty cool Canadian sports thing that happened this week as well. Hey, if you have any feedback on today's show, whether you like my sports takes or not, you can comment about other stuff too. Haney at RealAgriculture.com is my email. You can also call the Real Ag feedback line. The number is 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll talk to you on Monday. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of RealAg Radio, brought to you by Western Canada's deepest pre-seed herbicide portfolio from FMC. Get your field started off right with a comprehensive selection of herbicides that will help you manage tough weeds and play an important role in your resistance management strategy. See your local retailer today.